when my kidneys were failing and I had about 2 weeks left to live. So they said. Clearly, that was not accurate. I was looking at some old pictures and I realized in these old pictures, before I was sick, I was so happy. But I remember the self-judgment that I would give myself. And it was just the normal that the society would give, like, oh, you should lose some weight or whatever. And I was like, my gosh, I was so thin and I was so pretty. What was I thinking? And so I used that time, those 2 weeks, to just completely and totally fall in love with myself in every single way, no matter how it was. And I decided from that moment on, I was never doing that again.
Welcome to the Legendary Podcast, an invitation into intimate, soul-bearing conversations with the gods and goddesses of our Burning Man camp, the legendary playground of the gods. Here, you'll meet the visionaries, wisdom keepers, heart-centered entrepreneurs, and edge walkers who make up this extraordinary soul family. Together, we'll journey through the turning points that shaped us, the failures, the victories, the breakdowns, and the breakthroughs, and what it truly means to rise and build something sacred from the ashes. If you've been searching for your people, if you've longed to find a community that inspires you to rise, you found your tribe. So join us now for another sacred journey. Welcome to the playground of the gods. Welcome to Legendary. Hello, Legendary family. I'm Celine DaCosta, your storyteller, guide, and host for today's journey. And today we are welcoming in Mary Ruddick. Hi, Mary.
Hi.
So, fun story about Mary. I'm going to tell you something about Mary. I had to plug that one in. I was connected to Mary for this podcast just a couple of weeks ago, and I looked at her name and I did a bit of a double take. It felt so familiar. And I remember I scheduled her in and then I was like, okay, something's just getting under my skin. And then I did a quick search in my Gmail and I realized that I had actually hired Mary like 4 or 5 years ago. I was having some skin issues, which I've, as you can see, now resolved. And I was just so like, what do I do? And I hired Mary, and Mary was absolutely incredible. She's incredible at what she does. I personally, I didn't take her advice. I'm going to be honest. And it's got nothing to do with how talented the woman is. It wasn't my time. But I remember because she left such an incredible impression on me. And what a freaking small world, because I was living in Bali. What a freaking small world. And now on the other side of the planet, this woman happens to be in the same Burning Man camp. Like, coincidence? I think not. So, Mary, without further ado, I'm going to pass the mic over to you. And will you share with us, who are you? What do you do? What's just lighting you up in life right now?
Thanks. Do you know, I have to tell you, though, funnily enough, I did the exact same thing. And I had to go into my old Google Workspace. I was like, this name, I'm certain that this is the Celine from Bali. And I went into my old Google Workspace and found you. And the same thing. So what's lighting me up? I'm actually on like a completely different path this year. And it's extremely exciting, but also a little difficult to put into words because I've made some massive discoveries in the birth microbiome that have made me giddy. Like, I've written over 170 articles and I like kind of can't get enough research on it at the moment. And so I have full on nerded out this year. So I would say that is getting me the most. That, and now I'm learning how to tango and I'm loving it. Those two things.
I'm learning how to salsa and bachata. I'm so into
both.
Do you?
Yeah, I do.
Well, I will have to take you. So you know how in Burning Man, most people go to like electronic music?
Yeah.
I will do none of that. What I will do is I will scout the camp for salsa bachata nights.
I'm going to be right by your side.
Great. We have a club. There
Can we bring
multiple.
Salsa dresses? I'm bringing salsa dresses.
I've got my crew. Bring your yes. Mary, you are already revealing your genius. I didn't even think about bringing a salsa dress.
Yeah, bring a whole wardrobe with salsa all over.
Oh yeah. I'm not bringing the little thong one piece anymore. Like salsa.
Let's bring the sparkles.
Okay. We're in.
Mhm.
In.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Well,
Good.
okay, now we've already seen one of your
Mhm.
geniuses. I wanna dive in with you because this is the reason why we met in the
Mhm.
first
Mhm.
place.
Mhm.
Health, freaking important. I met you because I was going through my own personal crisis around health, which I've since then gone on a whole 5+ year journey with, and I know that the reason why you do what you do is because you've gone
Yeah.
through your own. So,
Yeah.
can you take us back and yeah, actually, share with us what it is that you're working on right now. I know you're
Sure.
really nerding out on the microbiome, but how do you help people? And what did it take for you to get to this place where you're so passionate about
Yeah.
this? 'Cause I know there's a very interesting story around that.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually health was the one subject I knew I didn't wanna work in. I had a sister who always wanted to be a doctor, and I'm not a doctor. I have a master's in the microbiome, but that was the one subject that I didn't like growing up, and so I was going into marine biology, and when I was sitting at a field station in the Bahamas, I got an infection in my brain that caused a fever that damaged most of my body, and gave me with a really left me with a 12-year full-on disability, disease in all the organs, nerve demyelination, neuropathy, kidney disease, all the things. And that is a very humbling experience to go through. And it's humbling on an hourly, daily, monthly, yearly basis because anytime you think you're getting on top of it, you don't, or really, and I think anyone could relate to this who's been through something even minimal with health. You think you've hit the worst of it, and you haven't even scratched the surface. And so it is continuously humbling because now no longer your character, your values get you to your goals. You can't just be like, I'm going to get up at this hour and do this thing because your body doesn't actually allow it. And so you can't override it in the same way that you can when you're healthy. And at the time, there wasn't anyone who had reversed what I had, and what I had was exceedingly rare. And everyone in my family was healthy. So, my parents flew me all over the world, literally, to see the best of the best. And I continuously got worse. And so it was an experiment of seeing what didn't work, which I actually think can be more helpful than seeing what does. It rules out and it tells a better pattern, and so I use that pattern with people actually now. I like to get all the details of what doesn't work for them. But I also learned from going through that and from very fortunately coming out the other side, not just through effort, and persistence, but honestly through a lot of grace, coming out to the other side into full remission, that there's a timing to all of it. So, a lot of folks in my field will and I think this is great 'cause it's good for an audience. They will make a lot of YouTube videos about, like, "These are the top 3 things," or, "You have to do this," or we'll go out to dinner, like, I'll be leading a crew through Africa to go to some tribes, and everyone's so anal about the seed oils and things. I am not. I am the opposite because I feel like it's autonomy, uh, when we go through this journey, and we have to be at a stage where we want to do that instead of it being forced on us. And also, w we can heal in endless ways. I think this universe is, uh, to speak to your story, right? You probably could have healed through 20 different methods. Same with myself, maybe even more. And so to put such a tight box on it, I like to open the box instead and really bring grace and fun back into it, and possibility. So I tend to work in possibilities and a bit of magic, which again. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm noticing, Mary, that as you're speaking about your rare conditioning, you're not naming it, and I sense that
Yeah.
there's intentionality around that. Is that true?
Yeah.
Can you tell us
Yeah.
why?
Yeah, well, for one, for the longest time, I didn't name it because no one knew what it was. So for a very long time, I really didn't. It's called dysautonomia. So I had a severe form. You can have light or severe. It's a deregulation of the autonomic nervous system, meaning that you don't send blood to your organs or to your nerves, so you end up getting organ death
Mhm.
and that kind of thing in severe cases, not in the light cases. However, Do you know, I think this is the first podcast where I've ever mentioned my education. I've never talked about my education on purpose. And that is because, for the same reason as naming an illness, uh, when we go for credentials, uh, we're not looking at efficacy rates, right? Or if we name
Tell me more. Efficacy rates? What do you mean by that?
efficacy rates, like in most fields, you don't rate someone by their degrees or their respect, like they're exalted on a tower somewhere. You you honor them based on their success in the field, and that means merit, their success rate. And so I found when I came out of school and I was practicing that a lot of people, before they knew who I was and before I was getting all the referrals, were asking about my degrees. And I had gone to President Clinton's doctor. I had gone to all of these fabulous doctors and I had gotten worse. And so I felt like, I don't even want to talk about that. Let's get to the next level of, how do we get there? Right. And so in the medical field, in the health field, in the coaching field, uh, I think we should go by efficacy rates instead. And then in terms of what you asked about the diagnosis, I find that we as humans will choose the discomfort of our presence over the possibility because possibility has broken our hearts so many times. And so, if we can find any reason as to why you or I might be different from the listener, and therefore it's not possible for them, it can kind of feed that story like it's not possible for me to get better. It's great that they did. Uh, I don't, I don't want to feed that in any way. Uh, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I've noticed a really interesting pattern, and it's just correlation. So take it with a grain of salt. But I've noticed there's almost like two sectors. There's the, uh, oh, that person healed from some crazy thing. And I have this thing that's totally unrelated. But if they healed, I can heal. It's possible. Right. And then there's this sector that's like, oh, they have exactly what I have. And therefore they must have been misdiagnosed because there's no way you can get better. And it just breaks my heart. So I try not to feed into that one.
Mm, yeah. I had a mentor who was specialized in treating a seemingly non-treatable, disease, AS, and
Yes.
so he shared with me a lot around the psychology of how we attach to our own pain because it starts to become a part of our identity,
Yeah.
and how there's a certain point where people won't heal because the identity of being healed is what they're disconnected from.
Yeah.
And that also there's, the emotional processing and the psychosomatic part they're too attached to, let go of, in the sense of the identity of needing to be the victim, needing to be the one who can't do certain things. Yeah, it becomes an attachment of the ego. And what do you yeah, I'd
Yeah.
love to hear what your thoughts are on around that.
I think we're getting a lot of that. I mean, I have kind of harsh views on that. So I'm just laying them on the table.
Harsh it
But
up. Give it
yeah, I
up.
have harsh views on that.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be sick. Being sick is a nightmare. It's actually a hellscape that well people cannot imagine. It is horrific. You lose everything you ever identified as. And most people liked themselves before they got sick. Now there's exceptions to that. But what I do see is this, and why I think what you just said is very relevant. And that is that there's not much validation for people who are sick, actually. They're constantly gaslit and told that they should be able to do things. They're making things up. It's in their head. It must be a character issue. And because a lot of the chronic illnesses today didn't exist, say, 50 years ago, right? And we can go into why. But most of them are not in the blood. They're in the nerves. They're in the microbiome. And just the blood is tested for the longest time. And so people are really told, like, well, you can't feel the way you're feeling. And so they get divorced from their own body's intuition. They're not getting validated by their community, by their family, by their friends. In fact, quite the opposite. So they start hiding how sick they are and showing the world this tiny little tip of the iceberg. And so, uh, and so with that, I think people start to get sensitive around that issue. And then they fight for what is and has been real for them. And they can get attached to that.
Mm.
Now, I do think that's a fair phase. I think all of it is part of it. I think uh, the falling into it, most of us know Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, which applies kind of pretty well. Like someone can get their way out with that. But it's really the story of Prahlad when you're sick. Prahlad from the Hindu stories and from the Dravidian, which is a beautiful story. If you all don't know it, I would butcher it, but you should read it. And
Well, tell
because
us which,
yeah,
like, whatever it is that for us to get a bit of a broad strokes for people who are
okay,
not familiar with Joseph Campbell and are not
sure,
familiar with this type of metaphor.
sure. So Joseph Campbell has this 12-stage hero's arc, which is fabulous and which I'm not sure that I would have healed without. It talks about the invitation where you get thrown into a new story, and there's multiple ways of that. And then you meet your mentors, you go on a path, and what's beautiful about the hero's journey is that it's human. And so you can start to see, oh, I might be at this stage of the journey. So you can look at yourself archetypally rather than personally, which takes away any of the self-identification, right? Whether it's the identification with being stuck or any of those kinds of things. So for me, the archetypal view, whether it was Carolyn Meese or Clarissa Pinkola Estes or Joseph Campbell or Carl Jung, uh, immediately freed me from the self-judgment and shame and allowed me to see what I needed to fix, what I could do without more stress, right? Because stress doesn't help you heal, and instead, kind of with a bit of humor. So Joseph Campbell's story starts with the hero always, and it could be a heroine, but the same thing. But what I realized recently was that the story, I think, really for healing is Prahlad, because Prahlad's story is also a hero's journey, but it's a hero's journey that starts broken, not strong. The hero's journey is a hard journey, period. Whether it's Joseph Campbell or Prahlad, it's isolating. You can't bring your friends with you. To expect your family and friends to come with you is naive, and it won't happen. It is isolating, and you are going to go do something that the entire village refuses to do, and you will do it alone on a mountain, weak and hungry in a storm, uh, and very unlikely to be able to kill that dragon. But you're going, and that is a really good metaphor for anything extremely challenging to include an incurable illness, because you're trying to do something that hasn't been done before, right? Or at least not in your body. And it's Herculean, and it's not fun, and you will be alone, and people will not understand. They will mock you until you get there.
Yeah.
And so it gives you a lot that you can use to get through it without sabotaging yourself, without going towards the saboteur, the victim, the child, the shadow archetypes that we all have. And so it's very, very good. But I stumbled upon Prahlad's journey this year because I have a friend named Prahlad. So I looked up his name and then I asked all about the story. And and I was blown away. I actually took 3 days off work just to write about it because the journey was completely different. He really started more in a place of true torture and being broken. And and that is where the person who is sick is. They start the journey broken, not whole. So anyway, I encourage anyone who's interested to read the story of Prahlad. It is beautiful.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Beautiful. Thank you. So I have, as you're speaking and you're sharing, I have a thread tugging at
Yeah.
me.
Ooh,
Yeah.
hi.
And it's edgy.
Yeah.
edgy. So if you're
Mhm.
willing to go there with me, I'm going to attempt to articulate it the best way I possibly can, but you may need to fill in
Okay.
some of the blanks.
Sure.
Yeah. So you're sharing around when people can, they get really sick and the
Mhm.
hero's journey that they undertake. And I'm also hearing that in today's society, there is a lot of it's common for people who are
Yeah.
sick not to get validated in their sickness to the point where they start to question themselves or feel
Yeah.
like they need to hide it or make it smaller or fit it into a box. So I'm hearing all of that. What I also have observed in today's day and age is that we are living in a culture where everything is allowed. And if you dare to speak up about anything, you get canceled.
Yeah.
It's in a culture where you can now identify as a dog and nobody can question you,
Yes.
among other things, right? And it's
Yeah.
edgy because, as we know, especially when we start bringing the conversation into LGBTQ, which we're not going
Mhm.
to debate the semantics of that now, but it can get edgy because there are some very real experiences, right? Like
Yeah.
being gay is real,
Yeah.
having a desire like transgender is real. And also, there is a whole other pool of people who will fit into that, but actually then change their mind and they're not be sure, like, oh, never mind. I was influenced. It was the culture. So, in this murkiness, and even when I think about the health field and how many people now and a day are being diagnosed, or like how many times I hear people, oh, I'm ADHD. Well, I'm ADHD. And it's literally like, what did you get diagnosed? No, I just am. And it's like, you may very well be, or you may not be. It's confusing, but now nobody gets to question it because you just said you are. So I guess you're our, and you're also a cat. I'm sorry. I just like
No,
I've
I
got to
love it.
bring
I
it
love that you're
through.
bringing this
It
in.
just kept. I was
Yes.
like, no, Celine, no, don't do it. But like,
No, do it.
it wants to come out. So I'm curious about in your because yes, it's real. I can feel even in your frequency. I can feel in your voice when you're sharing about your disease. Of course, that was real. Just like I know with my journey, with my acne was real. It was on my face. Like it wasn't
Yeah.
a thing I was making up. But I'm curious about
Yeah.
where is the line of, okay, this is a sickness. It needs to be addressed and you need to fully own it and go on the hero's journey. And then where's the line of, even what my mentor was sharing, which is, okay, now it's becoming a story and now it's becoming a thing that you're propping your identity on. And could it be that some of it is being exacerbated and that some of it actually is being created?
Yes.
So I'd
Yeah.
love for you have more, you
This
can
is fun. No one's asked this before. This is fun.
well, I'm
Okay.
here to ask the
Yeah.
questions that no one else we're here to
I'm
go where
here
no one
for
else
it.
has gone before.
Okay, I'm here for it. So first of all, my case is a little bit different than what I tend to see, simply because I'm from a very old-fashioned family. My mom was 40 when she had me. My grandparents were 40 when they had her. So my grandparents were born before there were cars, and they were fancy. So we were raised in a time where you do not speak about illness. Not even there are just things that you don't speak about in the house, and it's not because you're cut off. It's because I was raised in a time, and I think if we brought this back, it would be very good, and this is why I'm bringing it up. If you have something that makes you very different, whether it's an illness or a mental handicap or a learning handicap, it's not that you have to hide that you have it, but traditionally, you would adapt to society and not the other way around. And what I am seeing now is everyone saying, I have this, so society needs to adapt to me.
Mm,
And I am making the rules now. So it's a power play, and it's a very unhealthy power play, which doesn't tend to work for the person who has the disability, the handicap. So what I think is really important is that people aren't made to feel crazy when they get sick because there are illnesses, and that's different than self-diagnosing things and all of that. But that it's not a let me bring you tea and snuggle you every day. Yeah, you probably need that too. But it's a all right, let's make a plan. What are we going to do? because when I see there's actually this great science podcast that used to be out there, Radio Lab, I think it's still going. There was a really good episode about a family from New Jersey or New York. They had heavy accents. And they had an autistic son, and they didn't raise him autistic. They raised him to figure out how to do absolutely everything. So this kid could
Wow.
bowl. He went through school, and this was a heavily autistic child, not fully nonverbal, but right before. All right. So not a light case. And the way that they approached it is the way that my family would have approached it. And that is the way that you have a successful society, and a successful person who feels proud of themselves is that they figure out their limitations, and then they solve the puzzle of how to adapt to society. So
Yeah.
I think what I would like to see more of is us teaching people hardiness and character development from a young age, so that they can handle hard things, and that they don't use it as a way to control others ever, to say, you need to speak to me this way. Da, 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 da. No, but or I won't do that because that could be misinterpreted. People, you have your boundaries. You do whatever you want. But in the general broad strokes, right, we need to meet society. So when I was sick, when I was well enough to go to university, I didn't even tell my professors. I didn't tell anyone. Uh, and I really worked on adapting to it. And it was actually in learning to adapt that largely got me out of it. So, if that answers your question at all, I
Mm,
think everyone can be whoever they want to be, and they need to meet society.
wow. I love that. I didn't think about it that way, and I love that. It's that when people get sick, yes, your experience is
Mm.
real, and you need to meet society because society, if everyone's getting sick and then they want society to meet them, that is going to create a very fragmented, non-functional society. It's going to be
Yes.
create a fragmented whole. But I love this invitation that you are extending to, like the kid with autism.
Oh,
How
yeah.
do we empower him to be as
Mhm.
functional as he possibly can be and support him in the gaps where he isn't, which is, what a functional medical system and social
Yes.
welfare system would ideally be for,
Yes.
and
Yes.
it's interesting. There's something else that came up as you were sharing about when you were going to university and you didn't tell your professors and the ways that people might consciously or subconsciously weaponize their illness to get favors or to be empathized with. But the other thing that came through as well, I was thinking specifically, one of the things that hurt me the most about my skin journey is that I couldn't hide it.
Yeah.
It was the act of like, I couldn't not tell someone about it because it was displayed on my face.
Yeah. She's very vulnerable
Yeah, and I'm curious about whether it doesn't have to be specifically, you know, acne, but how does what you're sharing apply when it's obvious and visible
on your face. Yeah,
or on
that's
your
it's a
body?
really good.
Like it's
Yes.
like you
Yeah.
can't
You can't hide it.
pretend like, that you're
Yeah.
not that you don't have it because it's on you.
I actually think that's the hardest for the person going through it, because every morning when you wake up and you look in the mirror, you see it, and it's a
Mhm.
reminder that something isn't right. Now, for those with like nervous system disorders, you have it in the nerves, but the thing with health is that it's incredibly vulnerable and it's personal. And so to have to share that with the world, uh, it puts you in a very bad spot. I don't know if you've noticed this, and this may be a bigger conversation, and I don't know that I've got this nailed down, but I've been thinking about this issue a lot, and that is that truth tellers are not rewarded, and your skin was telling the world the truth. You don't get rewarded when you're sick. The part of the population with these lighter illnesses and things that are manipulating their power plays of their families and society, those people can manipulate because they have energy. But in general, yeah,
Mhm. That's big.
in general,
Whoa.
yes, in general, when you're actually sick, when you're really sick, sharing that, I don't mean that against your skin, I mean that against
Mhm.
the folks that are the power play. I'm gonna tie this into your skin. Uh, you get punished for telling people, that
Wow.
you're ill. you don't get empathy. You get judgment most of the time, nearly all the time. And especially when it doesn't suddenly go away. Because you have to remember, I mean, 50 years ago, it was rare to have an illness that was chronic. 40 years ago, 30 years ago, the rates have gone through the roof. And so we don't have a dialogue for this. We don't have even our movies, right? When people are sick, they're great. They're going on roller coasters. They just haven't told people their diagnosis, and then they're dead a week later. That is not what illness is.
Mhm.
It is like giving birth. You are like screaming and resisting, and it is awful. So, but the thing that I've seen is that people stop sharing what they're going through because they don't get rewarded for it. They get the opposite. Now, in the tribal cultures that I go to, and they're all different, okay, but in general, if someone goes through something horrific, like let's say Carolyn Meese talked about this one story that was really fabulous about a Native American who was taken to war because of his language skills. He was tortured in a camp and came back and he was a mess, and the tribe didn't know what to do with him because he was so like mentally broken. And they let him be broken for a while. And then the council got together and the entire village got together. And they had him tell his story, start to finish. And he had to
Wow.
say every bit of it. And everyone had to hear it, right? The entire thing. And he was allowed to go on as long as he needed to tell the whole story.
Oh. Well, like,
And then they put him in a lake and they had him tread water until he was done with his story. So he could tread water and he could let it go, or he could drown. But those were the only two ways that he could come back into the tribe.
wow, I'm covered in truth bombs. Covered. If you saw my skin right now, it's just like duck skin.
Yeah. And so when I say validation, that's the kind I mean. I don't mean the daily. I don't mean the coddling. I mean the tell us the real story.
Wow.
Tell us all of it. Let us cry with you. Let us let our hearts break, and then let's make a plan,
Wow.
and then you move on. So with the skin, when things are very visible, it's a different journey. So there's a hard for the invisible illnesses, the ones where people look fine. And there's a real hard for the ones that are on your face because you can't hide it. And I would say each can be used for gathering gold in very different ways.
Wow.
Uh, I don't know if you came to this or not. I had to get humbled about a billion times to get to this place. But when my kidneys were failing and I had about 2 weeks left to live, so they said clearly that was not accurate. I was looking at some old pictures and I realized in these old pictures before I was sick, I was so happy. But I remember the self-judgment that I would give myself. And it was just the normal that the society would give, like, oh, you should lose some weight or whatever. And I was like, my gosh, I was so thin and I was so pretty. What was I thinking? And so I used that time, those 2 weeks, to just completely and totally fall in love with myself in every single way, no matter how it was. And I decided from that moment on, I was never doing that again. And it was hard. It was hard. I had to start with my toenail. It's the time I literally hated my body for causing me so much pain and distraught. But I think when you have something right on your face and your skin, it can be, it's one of the harder ones, but it can be a tool for transformation for I am not what I am seeing. I am not the skin bag. And this does not take away my beauty. In fact, this is the way that I can actually let it shine the most. The real kind,
Yeah.
like the real gold that comes out. So I think it can be, I think the hardest things the hurdles that are the hardest, they have, not that they always give them. We have to dig real hard, but they can give us that gold that lets us be that relaxed person who genuinely feels love and then has that to give to others. And I don't know about you, but when I think of beautiful people, I never think of someone who's on a magazine. I think of like the old ladies who are like have soft, squishy arms that just like come at you, and like want to bake you a pie, that that radiates beauty to me. And
Mhm.
so I think a skin condition like what you went through is an opportunity for that. The other thing is, it gives you, you tell me if you got this. It's humbling in a way that makes you realize that you never really know what someone else is going through. And so it gives you the ability to give people the credit they deserve of, I don't know what's going on in your case, but I can respect your choices,
Mhm. Mhm.
kind of thing. What
Mhm.
did you get from it?
Hmm. Well, as you were speaking, I had an anecdote come to mind, or a metaphor rather. You know how in the
Or
Olympics, the swimmers, they they practice swimming with all of their body hair, and then on the day of the Olympics, they shave off their body hair and it just buys them an extra millisecond. It blew my mind. You ever hear about that?
yes.
It buys them like an extra time. And
Yes.
so what I was thinking as you were sharing your story about loving yourself in those 2 weeks, which is so powerful and impactful, and I also connected it back to my own journey where I woke up every day for essentially 7 years, and my skin was scarred and covered in these pimples that I just had no like, no matter how clean I ate, no matter how much I tried, I couldn't seem to get rid of, which is
Yeah.
in a story in and of itself, but we won't go into here. But I had a very similar, well, not similar in the sense that I didn't have a supposed death sentence on me, but I did realize I felt hopeless that this isn't gonna go away, and if it's not going to go away, then I might as well learn how to love myself now. And so it actually, this process was catapulted in 2022. I got braces. Now my teeth are fabulous, but I had braces
Are.
for a year and a half. And Mary, for that year and a half, I felt, and it was right on the back end of a very painful breakup. So I was
Mm.
single, braces, and acne, and I felt like an awkward teenager all over again in an adult body. And my process was, okay, I have to learn how to love myself. I have to learn because I'm
Yeah.
here. I'm gonna look like this for an indefinite amount of time. I might as well just learn how to love myself. And I really
Mm.
went deep in my self-love journey. And when the braces came off, and then 6 months later, I was able to find the root cause of what was happening with my skin, because I believe because of the
Mm.
psychosomatic work, the internal work I was
Yeah.
doing. It
Yeah.
felt, Mary, like I shaved my whole body, and I was just off to the, because I it was like night and day. People were like, "Oh my god, you're so magnetic. You're so radiant.
Mm.
You're so beautiful." I'm like,
Yeah.
"I have been this all along, but now that the
Mm.
crutches came off, I'm really gonna kill it."
Yeah.
And I'm
Yes.
sure for you, like, you're healed. By the time you were healed, you already done the legwork. It's done. Like, you did
Yes.
the thing that was
Yeah.
actually the major thing that needed to move, and then when your physical body returns to vitality and its natural radiance,
Yeah.
it's not really your physical body that's generating the beauty, it's actually the inner work. That's what I find.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Full body chills. You just nailed it. You nailed it. You nailed it. Because I, I experienced something similar, and I see this pattern. I don't know if you see this pattern, but it's when the person doesn't can let go of the need for that thing to go away, which is exactly what you did. That's where the magic comes in. And I've
Oh,
talked to so many practitioners about that, and I don't know why that is. I can pause it, but uh, there's something really beautiful and perhaps necessary to us accepting and relaxing into what is happening rather than fighting,
yeah.
while conversely still doing all the things you can do in your power uh, to be better, where the healing comes. I think so many people are under pressure now, especially. So I didn't have this because I imagine you went through it because you were in Bali where people like go to heal, right? And so people will be like, "Have you done this? Have you done this? Have you done this? Have you done this?" So I see people under a lot of pressure now, like, oh, if I'm not healing, it's because I'm not doing the right protocol, or I'm not doing the right thing, or a practitioner judges them for not doing it well enough, like you haven't been perfect enough, or something like that, or we do it to ourselves. But but the reality is that it's it's like a mystical experience healing. And it takes you through a whole journey, like what you went through, that horror of every single day, like the facing of the failure and the facing of the utterly being powerless to something that escapes you, and then falling in love with yourself anyway.
Mm.
And then you shine. And
Mm.
I'm so glad you did.
I'm
Because you
so
do
glad you
shine,
did.
you just glow.
Well, yeah, so do you. Right back at you, sister. We just over here shining our light, sprinkling it all over the world. So, Mary, this is beautiful. Yeah, I what I want to do is I want to connect this back to your story to really, really land the plane here because you've given us snippets here and there of your how it went for you, and I'm hearing that this was something that you were struggling with for 12 years, that health was actually, ironically, was not even on your radar as something to teach or be something in. And then life was like, well, I'm improvising here, by the way. Well, we have a plan for you, Mary, Miss Mary, and we're gonna put you through this trial and tribulation, and you are gonna get on your knees and you're gonna get real humbled and you're gonna learn how to love yourself. And I know I'm paraphrasing it in a way that makes light of the situation without, trivializing the actual hardships that you went through. I am curious though if we can zoom into that moment or moments or series of moments where you cracked open and you actually went from, okay, I have this disease and it's not curable and all these things, to, wait a minute, no, I don't accept this. There's another way. And you taking yourself into that journey of there's another way, pave the way for you to be able to help other people with their own healing. So what was that in the spirit of Joseph Campbell? What was that breakthrough moment?
It actually was a moment. It happened in an instant, actually. And I swear it was grace alone. Uh, so I was in it was year 8. And the year before that was the worst of the illness. I had to go back home to my parents. And I'm an independent extrovert. So that was humbling. And I was in bed for this year and I was basically alone in a room aside from meals being brought. I didn't have a TV or a computer. I couldn't read. So I was just in exquisite nerve pain with no escape, 24/7. There wasn't a single medication that works for that kind of nerve pain. And so, on one side, a blessing, yeah, no addictions to pain medicine. And on the other, it's a true living hell that there are no words for. And so, death was an invitation. I think anyone who's gone through that kind of pain, it's not that you want to die, but there's no way out. And so you want to die. Death would be preferable. It would be a relief. So I was not afraid of death. I was like, why haven't you come sooner? That's where
Mm.
I was at. But the pain that year, the nerve damage that year was so intense. I couldn't have a sheet on my body, and my brain was going. It was difficult to put words together. I was so skinny that I couldn't hold a mug, like the mug that I was holding. This I couldn't have done, and one day my aunt had mailed, she runs this Buddhist meditation center, and she had mailed this meditation CD. And yes, I am not old. I'm 43. So it was a CD. And we put it in, my mom put it in this little player. And it was a lovely, beautiful morning. The light was coming in through the windows, and it was around 11 a.m. And I had never meditated before. And it's this body scan meditation from John Kabat-Zinn, and he's a Jewish scientist, all right? So he is not like airy fairy. He's not like, and now we will over. No, it was like it was East Coast Jewish accent, kind of like harsh and like, but that worked for me clearly because in this body scan meditation, you start by feeling the life in your toes. And I don't know if the listeners can relate to this or not, but when your body has let you down on this level for so long, and you're in such pain, I only had the relationship to my body of uh, distrust, of betrayal, and of punishment. I felt like I was being punished, and I didn't feel alive in any way, shape, or form. I was an artist before this, and I was the life of the party everywhere before I got sick. So now to be so isolated was a punishment in and of itself. And so in that meditation, you start to feel the blood flow in your toes, and it was like a light came in. I felt more life in my body in that meditation, exquisite life. Like I could feel the joy and the dance in my cells. And suddenly the pain was still there, but I felt that nectar of life flow in. And I suddenly realized it was always there. And I woke up from that meditation and life was completely different. There was
Wow.
a grace. I saw beauty everywhere. It was that spring, it was like I had never seen flowers before. I can't explain it. And it's not something that I purposefully did. It was blind luck that came in. But that grace that came in and that life, I started cultivating it. I was like, I want more. I want to feel this all the time. And I did. And to be honest, that allowed me to start bringing in other things. So then I started with like affirmations. And then I made a lot of agreements with myself. And I think we all do this when we're desperate. I was like, I will do anything it takes to heal. And I had to really hold myself to that because that's easy to say when you think it's something big. But when it's like, I haven't laughed today, and you have to figure out how to make yourself laugh when your life is a living hell, that is where you hold yourself to like, I will do anything it takes to heal. And so I started building my whole day around exquisite things, even before I could move. And then I slowly brought in movements and I got better. That 2 weeks just ended. I ended up reversing the kidney disease. And to be honest, I healed long before internally, years before internally, before I healed physically. And had I not had that peace internally, I don't know how I would have healed the physical. I know people do it, but for me personally, it took out all of it. It took the mental, it took the spiritual, it took the lifestyle, it took the diet, it took the sacrifice, it took the fun. It took all of it. And really that's when things changed and they continued to blossom from there.
Mm. Wow. Talk about
Yeah.
laying everything on the altar, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah. I I had a I get a lot of people that were I attract people that are like myself that really don't have a way out. And very often their families will contact me and they'll be like, they want to do the assisted suicide. What do we do? And all of their practitioners and all of their friends and family are like fighting it. And the one thing I do, and I probably shouldn't legally say this, but I do the opposite. I'm like, well, you can. That's an option. Like sometimes people need to hear their options
Sure.
and just to be allowed to know that like, yeah, that is awful. And if you want to do that, I get it.
Mhm.
Because they're not depressed. Depression, suicide is different than someone in pain, right?
Mhm.
And so I bring that up because I have a lot of people do a fake death. And this is something that I did for myself. I was in bed for years, so didn't have anywhere to go. So I played a lot of mind games. And one of the games that was the most powerful for me, and that I highly suggest to anyone who's in anything like this, it could be a work situation or a loss of a house, whatever it is, but something major, is that you lay down and you fully envision the death of everything you know, specifically yourself. Like you have a full funeral. You see who comes to the funeral. You see what their lives are like for the year after, the 5 years after. And if it works for you all, like it worked for me, and for many of the people I've spent time with, it frees you in a way that nothing else has. It gets you out of the need for the McMansion, for the this, for the that, whatever it is that you grew up as the like markers. It frees you from those because now you've seen, okay, I'll, and not in a, we all know things go on after we die, right? But it's actually very relaxing to really envision your family being okay after you
Mhm.
die.
Mhm.
It takes all the pressure off of having to perform or do or be. And it allows for your best self to come out naturally.
Mm.
It kind of coaxes it out.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful as you're speaking. I see the connections, really deep connections with other conversations that I've had on this podcast. Gary Malkin, who was on the podcast, he has a exquisite monologue on death and just how it's people are not afraid of dying, they're afraid of fully living. And even as you're speaking, it reminds me of one of my teachers who's taught me for the last 5 years, every time I start to resist or fight or something, and she says, "You know, Celine, every day is a good day to die." And she's speaking of the shamanic death and rebirth cycle, but a continuous reminder that it's not really death that we're afraid of. It's really that that wave what you felt, what I would presume you felt in your toes and of like, "Wow, this actually is life and I'm not fully living it." And, when you were sharing about your experience, your moment of grace, it's not by coincidence that just yesterday I was on recording a podcast with Finian, who's also in our camp, and he too was describing a completely different moment where grace just where the heavens opened and he was shown that there was a better way to live. I believe I've had these moments myself. I believe that we are graced with these moments. So as Finian said, I'm paraphrasing, he said, "You can lose it, but you can't forget it. You can lose the practice, but you won't ever forget it. You'll always need to find your way back there." I
Yes.
lo I love
Yeah, mhm. He nailed it.
nailed it.
Yeah,
So
he
did
nailed
you.
it.
It's all connected.
Mm.
And so,
Yeah.
Mary, now that you are on the other side
Mhm.
of that entire hero's journey and you
Yeah.
look back at all of it, at all your life since then, I'm curious what thread of purpose or archetypal pattern runs through your life?
Well, I'll tell you when I felt the most purpose. So the condition that we spoke of, dysautonomia, which was the main cause of the issues, was exceedingly rare until COVID hit. And then suddenly 70 million people had it.
Oh,
So this is a condition that can be caused by Ebola, polio. There's very specific infections that can do this. They work on cytokines and they tend to hijack the healthier person's cytokines, right? So I was very healthy when I got sick. I was training for Ironman. So the healthier you are, the more your immune system wages, the more damage you can do to the nervous system with these infections. They're not common for these to go around, but when they go around, if you survive them, you usually don't want to for a portion of the population, right? Some like polio, 90% of people were fine. Not with Ebola. Ebola is different, but the about 2% survive at most. But but I came out of it as my mind works differently now. I don't like set these big goals. I don't have these like future plans. I kind of follow open doors and I have had a beautiful life from that. I wasn't looking for purpose because I made my purpose in that bed presence. And
mm,
I knew anytime that I was seeking something else, that wasn't my highest purpose. I I just came to be that the best way we can be is present. And that was the one thing I had power over. And so every time I found myself out of it, I brought myself back, out, back. And that practice is very good for me. But to answer your question, exactly 10 years after I was in full remission, and 10 years after I had a practice and have been traveling the world, and COVID hits, I speak at a lot of medical conferences, but I'm never speaking about the condition that I was sick with because it was too rare and no one needed to know about it. So I got asked to speak at a medical conference in Southern California. And so I flew, I was in Greece at the time. I flew over And it was incredible because with the condition that I had, you can't stand for even 3 minutes without having a seizure, right? And here I was standing on stage for over an hour, speaking to tens of thousands of MDs and telling them exactly how they can help their patients with this condition. And so it was like a culmination of, wow, there really was a purpose to what I went through. Because had I just gone through it and healed, and that just happened, the worldwide event. Or had I just gone through it and not had my private practice, then I wouldn't have seen the thousands of bodies and what works the best across the board and how to know where to steer someone, right? Because it's not just a blanket protocol. It actually really depends on what else is going on in their body. And so I got to the end of that hour-long medical talk, and I felt like divinely placed, you know, because now all these doctors could go out and they could do exactly what I've done with thousands of people, which we now have studies on. We have over a 94% success rate. They can go and do it, and these people do not have to go through what I went through. So that was probably the biggest one, I would say.
Mm.
But on a small note, I would say for me personally, uh, if I can be so selfish,
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
yeah, it, it's, I still, I've had massive stress, especially as you know, this last year has been very different, but I still haven't had a bad day since that illness. I haven't woken up in a bad place. I haven't gone to sleep in a bad place. I haven't had a racing mind. And for that gift alone, that I am personally grateful. That made it very much worth it for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I loved what you said, to go to bed without a racing mind. Now that is a
Yeah.
gift.
Yes.
That is a serious, serious treasure excavation you've done there. Incredible.
I hope I never lose that one. It is
Yeah.
delicious.
Yeah. Keep it and please keep, not only keep it, cultivate it and spread it around.
Yes.
More people
Yeah.
can use it. And I'm curious, thank you. Mary, for people who, someone who's listening right now, who's, yeah, either they're like sick,
Mm.
or have had some, whether it's something, you know, wherever it is on the spectrum. I feel like
Mhm.
I've gone through an experience.
Yeah.
Many people that I know have gone through some kind of experience, and
Yeah.
or they know someone who is going through that experience. What would you
Wha
want them to know?
Ah, I would want them to know that whatever stage they're at is probably appropriate. That if they're in the resistance phase, if they're in the self-medication phase, if they're in the F it all phase, that is part of the journey and not to feel bad about it. And that the way that you get out is going through and really going through. So feeling all of the feelings and accepting it and moving through and giving up on any timelines or outcomes. That outcomes ruin the ability to slay that dragon. That you want to focus on the tiny minute to minute or day by day actions that get you there and not the appearance of symptoms. If you focus on the skin, right, what you're seeing, you'll get defeated and you'll quit. If you focus on how sick you feel, you'll get defeated and you'll quit. Because healing, like everything else in this world, is completely upside down and counterintuitive. And so you have to go based on steps, habits, and trying to feel present, which is where we find love and which is where the only place we find health is in this moment, and giving yourself that grace until it's given to you, because that grace is what is really needed.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Very helpful. Okay, well, with that, we're gonna transition.
Mhm.
That was
Oh,
pretty cherry on
okay.
top. And as we, near the beginning of the end of today's conversation, I'd love for us to zoom out, and I'm going to ask you a question that I ask
Mhm,
everyone on this podcast,
mhm.
and I want you to answer with whatever comes through first. Yeah.
Oh, I like it. Okay. Mhm.
So, what does legendary mean to you?
Okay, I'm gonna tell you what came to mind. Uh, Expanse and inspiration. So if I think of legendary, I think of what's possible, not what's guaranteed, not what's entitled, but what's possible and what one can achieve and what one can give, right? Because if we think of a legend, we call them a legend because of how they impact others.
Mm.
And so, yeah, not only what one can achieve, but also then what one can give. That's
That's my favorite answer so far. Sorry,
oh,
other people.
thanks. I'm gonna go back and listen to all the
Sorry to
other
my
ones
other
now.
interviewees.
I'm so intrigued as to what the answers are.
I love it. It's beautiful. Well, Mary, you've just taken us on quite the journey. We got to learn more about you and how your story of illness actually was transmuted into a story of being able to support others with their health journey. And we've learned about what are some ways and very practical ways that we can practice loving and accepting ourselves, and that there is a process. And when it comes, I feel it's so valuable what you share, that when people are going through really serious illness, when we start to look at it and treat it as a hero's journey, it sounds to me like it can actually help a lot.
Yeah.
And all the, we went into the debates and the more edgy conversations around what it actually means to be sick and the ways that we might be doing it upon ourselves, the ways that it's happening to us. One of my favorite threads was just the ways how important it is for to empower people who have disabilities, who are sick, to adapt to society rather than the other
Yeah.
way around. So a whole narrative there on how to empower ourselves and empower other people to be able to step into higher ways of living for ourselves, for others, for society, and some incredible stories all around. So I'm feeling very satiated and satisfied by that conversation.
Good.
Before we close things off, I'd love
Mhm.
to give you one final opportunity. If there's any final message or blessing that you'd like to offer to those who are listening before we close.
Oh, thank you. There is. It is that, as we spoke about, there's so many ways to heal, and things that work for another person may not work for you. And if you can turn that into an engineer's type method of, okay, I fully ruled out that method because I did it fully. So I'm actually a lot closer to my goal now because I've done that. If you can start looking at what doesn't work and see that as more valuable than what does, instead of feeling behind, you can feel like, oh, okay, actually, I'm much further on my journey now. I'm closer. uh, then you will feel so much happier during the journey and you will be more successful. And it is more true because whether we are trying to invent something new, like a light bulb, or we are trying to pave a new path through through a forest where you have to hatch at it every single day because it keeps regrowing, you constantly hone your skills. And so if you can look at what doesn't work, not as a failure, not as a, this is proof that I can't heal, that I can't, or build this business, or I can't do that, but instead proof that, okay, that's not the path. Maybe this one is the path. And you go very strategically through, you'll have a great time. And I do think fun is a huge part. So So that allows you to bring in more lightness of being, more fun, and more success before you get there.
Mhm.
So don't be afraid of the things that don't work, and don't let those be part of your story. That would
Mhm.
be not a failure story. That would be my last bit of advice.
Beautiful. Well, it's wonderful advice. I know I can definitely take it on and apply it for different areas of life. All right. Well, that was a riveting conversation. Thank you for being with us, Mary. I'm very much looking forward to meeting you finally in the
Mm.
flesh. I guess it was meant to be. And dancing. I will be packing my salsa dresses now that I know what I know.
I'm so excited about that. We have to talk about shoes, but we'll do that
Yeah.
privately.
Well, oh yeah, shoes. This is very important. Shoes. We'll talk about shoes. This will definitely be. All right.
Ah,
Beautiful. Well, Mary, thank
well,
you for being with us today.
thank you. And thank you for such an incredible interview. I loved your questions. You asked such unique questions. And my goodness, I am impressed with your ability to recap. So thank you for this lovely hour.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, my friends. Well, this has been Selena Costa on the Legendary Podcast, and we will see you in the next conversation. Thank you for walking with us through the fires of remembrance. If today's story stirred something in your soul, share it with a fellow god or goddess. Subscribe to Legendary for more transmissions from our tribe, and may you continue weaving your legend in love and joy. Until next time, stay sovereign, stay sacred, and make it legendary.